Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope everyone's January is off to a great start. What we're going to talk about today is everything outerwear. So if you have any questions, there's a chat box to your right, so feel free to interact and ask some questions. We're going to be going over things like a brief history of overcoatings, some iconic styles, uh, our Adrian Jules models as well, and then some tips on measuring, or if you have like suit jacket measurements for your client, how to convert those to outerwear measurements. So we're going to start with a quick poll. If everyone can go to the poll here, we're going to see what your favorite outerwear piece is or your favorite style. So over here we have a lot of different styles. Um, there's the pea coat, trench coat, top coat, raglan, or if you have another style. Now, what's really cool here is a lot of these styles, they have military origins, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. Great, so we have some people like raglan, pea coat, trench coat, top coat. Great. All right. Now, I'm going to get started. We have a little presentation that we're going to follow. And again, if anyone has any questions throughout this presentation, just put it in the chat. All right, so quick history for outerwear. People started wearing outerwear pieces or overcoats back in the 1700s, and initially they had either military origins or they were to show social status. Now, some of our favorite selections on those handouts, like the trench coats, pea coats, parkas, the raglan sleeve that was a favorite of some, those all stemmed from the military. Other things like the Chesterfield or the polo, those typically had a social status attached to them. Now, what's really cool is a lot of the aesthetic on these overcoats that we have today, they were functional for the military. So what once was a very functional piece, something like a cape on the back of a trench coat that allowed the water when you're in the trenches just to fall off, now that's more an aesthetic. So that's really cool just to see how we went from a truly functional piece of garment to something that is stylish and iconic now. There was a resurgence in the 1970s, and that came with, if you're familiar with the Crombie, a great company, and the Beatles wore a lot of Crombie coats, and there was kind of a counterculture resurgence with outerwear. And today, we have softer outerwear pieces, much more lightweight. So back in the 17, 18, 1900s, in the 1800s, the wool out of the outerwear, they could be up to 30 ounces. And today, we're wearing much lighter jackets. Then one quick distinction here, we use top coat and overcoat interchangeably, but there is actually a difference. So an overcoat, by definition, it's going to be something that's below the knee with fabrication that's 20 ounces or greater. A top coat could be at the knee, and it's going to be typically 18 ounces or less. So there is a small distinction, but today we do use those terms interchangeably. All right, now does anyone know who any of these icons throughout history for outerwear styles are? So we have 3 on this slide, and then the slide before we had someone in the background. Yep, we have Winston Churchill, Daniel Craig, and Cary Grant, exactly. So Cary Grant's on the left, Winston Churchill on the right, and then Daniel Craig 007 brought a new cool style for our outerwear features. And then I'm just going to go back to the previous page. This guy in the background was James Dean. So you can see how the styles and popular overcoats have changed throughout time. Even with Daniel Craig, it's a much shorter, trimmer jacket than what Winston Churchill was wearing. But it's really cool to see the evolution of these outerwear pieces throughout history. So we're going to start with some pieces that had interesting military origins. Then we're going to go to some more social overcoatings. Now, our first jacket here is the peacoat. The peacoat you'll see on the right, that's an Adrian Jules peacoat called our Travis model. This was originated in the Netherlands. So the Dutch in the 1800s, they had their navy wear peacoats. It's derived from pige, which essentially just means coat made out of a heavy, coarse wool, that Dutch word. So the Dutch get the, I guess, we can give them credit for making it, but it's really the British who popularized this jacket. So the British in the 19th century, their navy wanted to smarten up their officers. So they had the British military start wearing these peacoats. Now, the Americans adopted this style after seeing the British wear peacoat, but instead of having their high-ranking officers in the Navy wear it, they actually had lower-ranking Navy personnel who would actually climb the ropes of the boats. And some key features for the peacoat, one is it flares out a little bit at the bottom, and that was to help us scale the ropes. So again, functionality on the peacoat, it's double-breasted, keeps you warm, you can button it up. It's typically out of a really heavy fabric, heavy wool, again, to keep you warm. And that flares out at the bottom to help those guys that were climbing ropes. Now, another coat with a very cool military origin is the raglan. So imagine this, it's the 1800s, you're a military officer and you get shot in the arm. Does not sound quite fun, sounds incredibly painful. That's what happened to Lord Fitzroy Somerset. So again, he was a British military officer. You're going to see a lot of these styles. They do have, if the British did not invent it, they popularized it. But Somerset, he got shot at the Battle of Waterloo, but he wanted to continue on his career in the military. He noticed, though, that having a really heavy sleeve head and the seam here on the jacket, it was uncomfortable for him. There did not grant a lot of flexibility, and it inhibited his ability to perform on the field. So he reached out to John Emery, a bespoke tailor, and together they developed what's called the raglan style. So they took out sleeve heads, and then instead of having this seam here, it's all one piece. So you can see in these photos, there's no seam. The sleeve is one piece on the jacket. That makes for a really comfortable jacket with a lot of flexibility. And it's going to, lack the structure of a traditional garment. So again, the raglan, which is really cool, and this is an Adrian Jules Ryan model, we call that, but it's really cool because it's infiltrated other types of garments. So you might see sweatshirts or especially baseball t-shirts, they have that raglan sleeve. And what also is really nice about this is in 2020, this style became very popular again. So it kind of dipped in popularity for a while, but now it's showing another resurgence in 2020 with a lot of popular brands starting to make raglan sleeved overcoats. And it is one that a lot of people, if you're building like your timeless wardrobe collection, a raglan jacket actually now is included in that. Okay, so we talked about some of the functionality that the pea coat with the flared out bottoms and the raglan with the flexibility made on the military fields. Another innovative garment was the Macintosh, and not so much for stylistic features, but because of the material. So back in the 1820s, a Scottish gentleman by the name of Charles Macintosh, he created a rubberized bonded cotton. So it was like a liquid rubber that would bind to the cotton, and this made for a waterproof material. And of course, this was revolutionary because before this, you had a lot of militaries wearing those 30-ounce heavy wools, and now they could have a waterproofed garment. So the British Army adopted this style. And what else is pretty interesting is if you get a really purist Macintosh, if you go to Scotland and you want this garment made at the traditional original factory, they do the same type of craftsmanship as in the 1800s. So with that, everything's by hand. They actually glue and tape the seams together with the rubber by hand. So that's pretty interesting because you don't see that often, that a traditional Macintosh is more of a handmade garment. What we offer at Adrian Jewels, it's called our Mac model. That's going to be the photo that you see here. And we have in stock some Loro Piana storm system, which is waterproof. And that's what we utilize, that waterproof type fabric for the Mac. Now, that innovative fabric also inspired the trench coat. So once we had this waterproof fabric, the British military decided to have it in a new style compared to that Mac, which was a single-breasted with the bowl collar. They had a trench coat here. So Burberry, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, they actually created a waterproof gabardine twill that the British military started to use, but it was derived from that Macintosh rubberized cotton. Now, what was great with the trench coat was in World War I. The British military thought, hey, this is great. This is a waterproof garment and it's lighter weight. So a lot of the soldiers in the British military for World War I wore trench coats. We talked about it briefly before, some of the functionality of the trench coat. So we had a cape in the back, which would allow for rain and water to roll off to keep soldiers dry. You can see up top by the neck, there's a flap here that added ventilation, a belt to keep everything tightened up, so a belt with D-rings or tie belt. And many of these features that you'll see on here were functional for war. And again, double-breasted to keep you snug and warmer. So there are other styles that had military influences. We're not going to be able to cover everything in today's session, but I want to go on to some social styles that are part of a timeless wardrobe. So here we have the Chesterfield. So Chesterfield is cool, and there is not a straight answer on where or how it originated. Some say it started in the city of Chesterfield. Others say the Earl of Chesterfield invented the style. But nevertheless, in the 1800s, this was the style to prove that you were a high society gentleman. So it's typically a double-breasted garment out of a dark color fabric and a peak lapel. So again, it's a double-breasted, dark cover fabric, peak lapel. And of course, this is going to fall, at or below the knee. So it's a longer jacket. Today, you might hear terms like, exactly, Mike, you might hear terms like the Chesterfield collar. So originally, you didn't have that contrasting velvet on top, but over time, That's been an aesthetic that really brings attention to the garment. So the top collar, which the lapel is this bottom part, and then the collar attaches around the neck. A lot of today's Chesterfield jacket can have that contrasting velvet or like a black velvet on a black jacket on that collar. And this is definitely like the high society jacket. Today, a lot of gentlemen are still wearing Chesterfields or derivations of the Chesterfield jacket, but traditionally it's heavy wool, dark color, double breasted, with or without that contrasting velvet on the top collar. All right, now the next one, gonna give a couple hints before we go to the slide. So the next one was originated in England, but it was most popular in America, and it became popularized due to a sporting game. Typically a tan jacket out of camel hair. Does anyone have any guesses on what this next jacket is? Polo coat, exactly. Polo, perfect. So this polo, again, this is a staple. This is that, in America, the high society Ivy League coat. So the polo coat, when polo came over to America, a lot of the polo players, first they'd wear these tan wrap jackets. They'd have a belt to wrap it with. And then they decided in America that, let's put some buttons on instead of a wrap. So then we had a new iteration of the polo jacket with buttons. And then, unlike the British polo players, the American polo players would keep their jackets on after the game when they would socialize. And spectators recognized this, thought it was pretty cool. So then you had spectators in the stands starting to wear their tan polo jackets, and the polo players. And what started at Yale and Princeton became an Ivy League overcoat staple. So now wearing this polo coat really showed you were in America a high society person. Typically it's going to be double breasted with that wide lapel, patch pockets on the bottom, with or without sleeve cuffs. So this was really popular in the 1920s. Again, it was super popular in the 80s, 90s, and we still see people wearing this style. Now, with a couple points I want to pull out here. So again, in the 70s, I mentioned there was kind of a counterculture resurgence of car coats and top coats. That was from the British brand Crombie, and you had guys like the Beatles starting to wear their Crombie coats. What we consider a top coat and a car coat. Top coats, again, we interchangeably use it for an overcoat. It's going to be at the knee, typically, maybe a little below the knee. Lightish weight fabrics, but a car coat for us, what we consider is going to be a shorter jacket. So typically, above the knee, around mid-thigh. Now here on the left, that's one of Adrian Jewell's single-breasted top coats. We call this the Cooper model. And just talking through some of the styles throughout history, you can just see, looking at whether it's Crombie coat or the Cooper model, how styles have changed. So we don't see massive changes, but the shoulder is really soft. So it's a soft shoulder. It's much trimmer, the jacket. So traditionally you have overcoats that are going over coats. Today you might do that, or a lot of popular styles just have top coats or car coats going over a shirt or a sweater. And then again, what's in style now is going to be a little bit shorter. So a lot of questions that we have, it's going to be, how do I adjust my client's measurements for a top coat? And here are some adjustments, not for length, but for the actual garment. So if you're trying to style something that is going over a jacket, we're going to recommend the point-to-point measurement, going to be a 1/2 inch longer, the half back 1/4 inch bigger, and then a half girth we're going to recommend on a single-breasted jacket adding 2 1/4, or on a double-breasted jacket adding 4 3/4. Now, what else is important to remember is these outerwear pieces, they're meant to keep you warm. So they still have some functionality now, but they're meant to keep you warm. So the sleeve length, we're not going to want to show a shirt sleeve cuff. So for that, sometimes adjusting the point to point will be enough if you're using an outseam measurement to cover that. But if you're using an inseam measurement, you're going to want to add a little bit more on the sleeve length to make sure that it goes down to your client's wrist. And then if you're using a jacket that's just going over a t-shirt or a shirt, then you still want to increase the sleeve length. You might not need to increase the point-to-point and halfback that much, but you definitely still want to increase the sleeve length because, again, these are to keep us warm. And now I'm going to add these as handouts so that everyone, if you wanted to download these for your review, we have measurement adjustments in the handouts section. Then another type of adjustment that you're going to want to make from a regular suit jacket will be how long you want to make the jacket. What we've done here is given you a size chart based off of someone's height. So again, this is just suggested lengths. We can you can deviate that from this. So if a client wants it a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, or if sometimes their posture might have an effect. But in general, if someone's around 5'10", and they wanted it at the knee, around like 43 inches should be around the knee length. If you wanted it mid-thigh, look at the car coat lengths, and so that's going to be around 35 inches for mid-thigh. All right, so that's a brief history of iconic styles, some adjustments. Now, does anyone have any questions, whether it's on styles throughout history, measurement adjustments, or Adrian Jewell's models and what we do or do not offer? Okay. Well, again, what we can run through, we have a couple minutes left. For the styles that we went through, Adrian Jewell's has a Chesterfield type jacket. We do have a Macintosh. We have a trench coat. We have a polo jacket. Then we have a lot of different car coat variations, whether it's a shorter jacket single-breasted or more of a pea coat double-breasted, which that pea coat now is, we see it typically in a car coat style, so it's shorter. So with the model names, our pea coat model is called the Travis. Our Macintosh model, which is a longer coat that's more of a proper top coat, is called the Mac, M-A-C. If we have a trench coat, we do have a trench model that's in style, or that's on the online system right now, but reach out to your customer success manager and we can make sure that you're set up for that. Then the polo, same thing, we have a polo model, it's called the Polo. Then a lot of our different car coats and top coats, so more of a traditional top coat double-breasted. We have what's called the Chadwick, so that's a double-breasted top coat with peak lapel. A long single-breasted top coat called the Park Ave. And then some of our shorter car coats that are single-breasted. Notch lapel was that Cooper that we saw on a previous slide. and a peak lapel is the Crosby. And behind me over here, I don't know if you guys can see it, our raglan model is called the Ryan. And we also do offer belts. So most of these garments you can have belts, whether it's a tie wrap belt or a half belt in the back of the jacket. So that's just something you would request if you're on the portal. It's under sports styling. There's going to be a belt field, and you'll be able to see all of our belt options. Then what else is a great place to find information on Adrian Jules centric models? In the online portal, under our resources tab, we have a style guide that goes through some outerwear models and a lookbook that's going to go through some of the new pieces that we added in 2021. What we've added in 2022 that you'll be seeing through marketing campaigns, the new Mac style, so the Macintosh jacket, that's a new release this year. And then we do have a ladies jacket, which is a single-breasted peak lapel. It looks similar to the men's Crosby jacket, but it's a bit trimmer, and that's called the Kate model. Okay, guys, so thank you everyone for your time. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email at alex@adrianjules.com or to reach out to your customer success manager, and we can walk you through how to order these models, or if you need any photography, if you want to promote this on your own to your clients through email, social media, or any other outlet. So again, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone's staying warm. If anyone's in New York City this weekend, stay safe. Heard getting quite the storm. And again, thank you all, and we'll meet next time. Bye, guys.